the recording now. And now I will introduce our lovely panelists for this session, and then we can jump right into the questions. So firstly, we have Chuk Odenibo, proudly Franco-Albertan. He is passionate about the ways in which the environment impacts human health and the role of justice in understanding of how our societies function. Very active in change-making spaces in both Canada and at an international scale. His educational background centers the domains of environmental science, chemistry, public health, and medical geography. In his work as one of the founding directors of Future Ancestors Services, he focuses on environmental and climate justice. And outside of this work, he is also involved in several boards, committees, conferences, and movements to reimagine and recreate societal structures and systems for the well-being of all of our kin, human and non-human. So we have Dino Fitritsa, hopefully I pronounced that right, climate change activist and active in many climate change events, climate reality leader since 2011 with the Climate Reality Project Canada, Global, completing climate change presentations to more than 5,000 audiences since 2011, offline and online. Dino works at GAIN Indonesia as a technical specialist, human-centered design. Previously, he worked as manager of an environmental pillar at the Sustainable Development Goals Secretariat, DKI, Jakarta province. And then we have Tammy, social activist and facilitator for the issues of social forestry, climate change, gender, and community development, active member of the working group on social forestry, set up by the ministry since November 2006 to now. Tammy is a founder and board member of Kawal Borneo Community Foundation. The organization, based in Kalimantan, focuses on the issues of forest community empowerment. Tammy has also been a climate reality leader since 2009. So now we're going to jump into some of the questions. So the first question here, based on your expertise or experience, what is eco-anxiety and how does eco-anxiety manifest? So I will give this question to Chuk.
Okay. Eco-anxiety is really interesting to describe. Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Chuk. Side note, hi. Look at me being rude and forgetting to say hello. But yeah, eco-anxiety is really interesting because I would say it is the plethora of emotions that stem from recognizing climate change as a very real threat to the present and to the future. And so we call it eco-anxiety because I think for many people this manifests as anxiety, but for many others it may manifest in a plethora of other ways, right? There's people who will get or who will feel immensely depressed, people who will feel stressed, or there's people who feel galvanized to action or called to action or empowered, right? So it is a plethora of emotions. In the last panel we talked about it maybe being called sometimes eco-empathy or eco-disaster. But I think that's how I would say the base simplified definition is a plethora of emotions that people experience when recognizing the reality of.
Beautifully spoken. Thank you. Tammy, do you want to, based on your expertise and your experience, what is eco-anxiety to you and how does it manifest?
Yeah, and as far as I know, and based on my experience working on this issue, eco-anxiety is a kind of feeling worry. That's kind of deep feeling about uncertainty in the for the future. This is because of the condition of the surrounding the climate change issue. It's a kind of the feeling about uncertainty, about unhealthy, unpredictable in the future because of the deteriorating climate change. And we can say like kind of ecological grief, climate worries, a kind of that. And it reflects the way we live. So for example, in some parts of Indonesia, where people living on the coastal area, I think they feel worry more than the people inland. And then they reflect in a different ways of living. It could also express in the way they think, the way they speak, the way they act. So the kind of anxiety and some stuff of that.
Yeah. Dino, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, thank you, Michelena. About eco-anxiety, I think this term can be also have broad meaning, because it's not only related with climate change, because it's talking about ecological things, not only about environmental issues, but also when we talk about ecological or ecology, it's also related with human interaction also, that can cause from the disasters that might happen, whether it's a man-made disaster or natural disaster. So when we talk about eco-anxiety, it's also related with mental health. But the case that we have in Indonesia, I think degrees of how people relate with the disaster, whether it's related with climate change or not, I think it's also different. Butami already mentioned that before. For example, for some people in Jakarta, because they already have like yearly flood, something like that, they might cope with that easily. But when it's related with because of the drought, because of the flood, it can relate with the stress, it can relate with economical issues, something like that. They can lose some job, something like that. It can create their fear, their mental health, something like that. So the terms can be spread not only with physical health, something like that, also relate with mental health, but also must relate with community health. And also sometimes we must also relate it with economical issues that will be related with the mental issues, something like that. So the issues can be broad, not only relate with mental issues. They can also relate with the other sphere that may came with the ecological issues or the pollutions or the disaster that might relate with the ecological, something like that. Yeah. So that's, I think, the eco-anxiety that we are faced in Indonesia, something like that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So the next question we're going to ask here is, do you currently experience or have you previously experienced any form of eco-anxiety, and how do you manage it? So I'll bring it back to you, Chuk.
Yeah. So this question I always find really, really interesting, because with eco-anxiety, I think there's almost a sense of luxury in being able to feel eco-anxiety. And what I mean to say by that is typically eco-anxiety is characterized by feelings of fear for the future, right? And so it gives people a sense of helplessness, which leads to sort of that series of feelings that they may feel, like grief and anxiety. But I think for a lot of people who are marginalized in society, and so people who are dealing with more daily occurrences of discrimination that they are focusing on sort of surviving and getting through and getting over, they tend not to feel as much eco-anxiety. And so I often tend to tell people I don't really feel a sense of eco-anxiety because I'm busy there focusing on all the sort of other very much related issues, and that's the irony of it, is they're all very sort of related or very interlinked issues, but they manifest for me on a more daily basis, right? So when we, for example, talk about racism or like environmental racism, in a Canadian context, the way it manifests tends to be, communities of color tend to be more impacted by urban heat islands. They tend to be more impacted by
I take care of that, Michelina. I try to unmute the person who was open. Don't worry.
Okay. Something just happened, but I'm going to Gaia to the bowl. So, but basically, in summary of what I was saying and then rudely cut off on. But essentially what I was saying is I've never really felt a sense of eco-anxiety in the true sense of it, because rather than focusing on what is to come, because there is going to be a lot to come, I'm seeing myself and my communities and the people that that I connect with impacted on a daily basis by various manifestations of the same symptoms that caused climate change, right? So, racism, colonization, patriarchy, the whole shebang, right? We recognize that they interlinked and that we have certain issues and we face certain issues because of these other systemic stemming issues. And so in that recognition, to summarize and to wrap up, eco-anxiety is very real. But I think I don't even allow myself to feel that eco-anxiety simply because I'm so focused on all the other, barriers and obstacles that I have to deal with, or that my community has to deal with on a more sort of immediate basis, in hopes that we can get to a point where we then get to also be like, ooh, I'm worried about 5 years down the line too.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up that very real issue of like interdisciplinary issues building on top of each other. And when you're focused on immediate issues, there's less room and a capacity really to focus on eco-anxiety further down the line. So thank you. Tammy, so how do you currently experience eco-anxiety, or have you in the past, and how do you manage that?
Yeah. A few years ago, like if I'm not mistaken, in 2019, there was a very big flood in my hometown in Kalimantan, in Borneo, in South Kalimantan. And then about 11 districts out of 13 were, full of water, very deep water. And at the time, people in the province thought that it was because of the illegal mining coal, as well as about the deteriorating of the forest, change the land into the palm oil plantation. Even though the government said that it was due to the extreme climate extremes. A couple of years ago, there was, it's never happened. It was the first time that in Kalimantan, there was a really big flooding in almost everywhere, month. And then because of that people think, people thought it was not right. Many have lost their homes, their lands, their rice fields, etc. And because of that, several people, with the help of the NGO in there, they made a kind of class action to the provincial government because of the, because they thought that it was due to the illegal coal minings, as well as the land change use from the forests to the what we call palm oil plantation. And was really scary for all of us. Even my house it is location in a kind of hilly area, really, thick. But we also gain the impact of the floodings. So in my living room, the heights of the flood until my what's that? Almost like 20 centimeters, and it took kind of 2 or 3 days just to make the water out. So can you imagine that many books in my house just broken weight because of the flooding. So because of that, right now, I think almost every year since 2019, people in my hometown worried about whether we will be getting, a kind of a big flooding, something like that. So right now, NGO right there, they really make a kind of advocacy just to pursue or to make the companies or the illegal groups not to make a kind of illegal minings or illegal forest change, but we need to acknowledge the efforts is not easy. So we need to pursue the advocacy. We need to boost or to promote that this is not good to do a kind of illegal mining, to make a forest change of the use from the forest to the mining, something like that. And then because I've been also for years working with the community forest or farmers in Indonesia, almost every year, the farmers, the community groups, they always ask whether this is the right time to plant the rice or to plant tree, etc. Because why? Because right now they don't know for sure when they can plant, when they can harvest, because of the drastic change of the climate. So in Indonesia, a couple of years, when I was a child, when I was very young, we knew that if we mention about August, September, October, November, December, January, that's a rainy season. But right now, you could find any month for rainy season or any month for the dry season. So for farmers, it becomes quite difficult to predict when they can, plant, when they can harvest, when they can grow the paddy, etc. So yeah, we are facing uncertainty. So I call it somehow as a kind of eco-anxiety, the deep feeling of worries about the future because the uncertainty of the ecological things.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that experience. It sounds very stressful. So I can imagine that the feelings of eco-anxiety and how they build when you're faced with such a large climate disaster. So thank you for that perspective. Did you want to share your experiences with eco-anxiety and how you may manage that?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Michelena. I think that the case for me a little bit different with Tami, because Tami lives in Borneo while I spent my childhood in Riau. Riau is in Sumatra Island. So in my case, Riau or Sumatra, they usually have forest fire because of slash and burn activity, something like that. So in 2008, I think, we have like very big forest fire, something like that. That gives trouble in Indonesia, and also the smoke during that forest fire also reach other countries, for example, Malaysia and our neighborhood country, Singapore, something like that. So during that forest fire, it's so hard to breathe, and also you have limited visibility, something like that. It gives me some bad feelings during that forest fire, something like that. But as I'm growing older, I moved to Java Island to live in Jakarta right now. So, but when we talk about eco-anxiety, it feels about uncertainty, worries, fear, something like that. When I'm moved to Jakarta, I don't feel that forest fire again, but it still have fear from me because I think about other person. The other person I mean is my family. For example, I still have my father and mother there. As they're getting older, I feel worry about them because as the people getting older, they cannot tolerate the pollution of smoke like when I was younger, something like that. So also my cousins, my brother, my sister, something like that, they also have sons and daughters, something like that. Sometimes it feel like you fear for something bad happen to your loved ones. Also can make you feel fear. You fear of something that you love. It will trigger your actions. So I think that's because of that. I'm looking for more information about what will happen if I don't do something and stuff like that. So I think that's also became the motive or the reason why I joined the climate movement in climate reality, something like that. Because when I can do something, even I don't feel the disasters by myself. But if I do something right now in other place, it can affect someone that you really care about, whether it's in Sumatra or whether it's in Canada or something like that. By doing something simple, something that you do presentation, you make people realize that we do something here. It can also affect other people all over the world. It can also relate, can affect the one that you love, something like that. So the fear of losing something might trigger our what can I say, our action. I think that's happens to me. My fear of eco-anxiety also growth when I have a son, something like that. You will be more worries about, because when they're younger, for example, they still baby, their son, you will worry about them more rather than myself. Something for me, for example, that also your father, your mother, when they're getting older, you also fear something bad will happen to them. You cannot go to take care of them or something like that. So I think that's the situation for me, Michelena.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's
Mhm.
very insightful. And I definitely agree that when, you know, you're worried about people that you love, right? Because you're more motivated to act towards those things. So that brings me to a very related next question. What do you think inspires more positive action and change, fear or hope, and why? And I'll start with you, Dino, since you brought it up in your answer.
Okay, I think the case will be a little bit different. Last June, me and Tami, because we have like online class before. Interestingly, in that class, we have made some tasks for the students. They must make for a webinar for the final project. And then they must choose the themes by themselves. So one of the group, they make discussions about eco-anxiety, and they managed to invite around 190 students, university students all over Indonesia, and then we discuss about what they think about eco-anxiety in their area, in their province, something like that. How they deal with that, whether it's positive or fear, something like that. Because most of them, like teenagers, like adolescents, I think Gen Z, something like that. I also realized that some of them might it triggered by the negative reactions in not negative reaction, negative news in some not cities areas, something like that, because they feel it more related with the disaster. For example, they live in coastal areas, they live in forest, something like that, because they feel it by directly the impact. But in the cities area, for example, because probably they have the more privilege, when disaster happen, they can move to, let's say, better hotel, or they can move to with their families to other cities while they're also spending their holidays, something like that. They're more into positive news because there are too many bad things that they can feel don't relate with them. I think the strategic for the communication will be a little bit different because also the experience relate with the people that they feel. But for me, by my side, I think we must combine both the negative or fear informations and also positive informations. I think we can create better impact.
Yeah,
I think that's it from me.
Yeah, and it really, I think it also depends on the person and their specific motivators as well, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Did Tammy or Chuk, did you want to add anything?
Yeah.
I just wanted to.
Okay. Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay, Chuk, you go first.
Mine was just like one line. I just want to say I fully agree with Dino. I think fear without hope is a demotivator. Fear with hope is a motivator. Hope with no fear is, once again, a demotivator. Hope with fear, motivates a bit. So it's also that piece of like, it's the combination. Thank you, Dino, for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's can be only fear or cannot be only hope, but it's kind of combination of fear and hope. Because why? Especially when someone or a group have been experiencing a terrible thing, like in my hometown, and then they've started to thinking about the way to save our environment, not only about the action and the daily action, but they really do a kind of very structured programs. So, for example, there is I forget the name. Walhi is a kind NGO focusing on the issue of the ecological things. They're right now. They are not only doing a kind of class actions, but they have program to save the environment. And I myself and also Dino, we've been quite sometimes from me myself from 2009 and Dino from 2011. We are really active in the issue of climate change, environment, forestry, kind of that because of we don't want that, my kids, I don't want my kids having such a terrible experience, like the people right now. My son Alif, one day he asked me, Mom, if I live in the future, let's say in 15 years from now, what would be happen if the global warming is like this? So what is the future like us? And then I asked him, come on, join mommy, join me to be part of the climate leader. You know, that's the way. When a person feels worried about that, I ask them, I urge them, come on, learn about this. Now, do some action. Start from your own family. Start from your own neighborhood. Do from the very simple thing. So there's a kind of, so that's my experience. I try to combine fear and hope, and it becomes a kind of energy to change, energy to embrace people as many as possible to do actions.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think we definitely need both fear and hope to really push us towards community, because, you know, once we're in community, we care more about people around us, and it also increases our empathy for people and the planet. So that's a very, very good perspective. And thank you so much for sharing. So now we're going to open it up to our audience. If anybody wants to share any of their experiences with eco-anxiety, how do you manage it? What are some things that you face day to day? You're more than welcome to raise your hand and speak out loud, or you can write in the chat, whatever your preference is. Yeah. And if nobody wants to share, we can continue asking questions for a couple more minutes before we switch over to the art workshop. But I encourage you to share. Nobody feeling brave today?
I guess while people are thinking, something that's coming to mind during this discussion of eco-anxiety, one of the things that's exciting about this panel is just the international sort of element of it. It's interesting to see what people are most sort of concerned about, because even within a country as large as Canada, let alone a country as large as Indonesia, you know, when people are aware of climate change, you hear people sort of talking about, you know, flooding versus forest fires versus mudslides versus tornadoes versus hurricanes, like the hurricane that just fully destroyed Puerto Rico and it's heading off to the coast of Nova Scotia right now. And so I just find it really sort of exciting we're able to have this conversation, but also I think it comes with a feeling of almost overwhelmed, right? Because we already recognize just how massive the issues can be in our own country. That when you start sort of realizing just how everyone is in similar boats, but different boats, right? That difference of manifestation. I was talking to a friend recently who did an internship in Fiji, and he was telling me that Fiji is buying land in like Australia so that they can really move over their entire population if the island is fully is gone, right? And I was just there, but like, damn. I mean, we're worried about a lot of things in Canada, but our government is not buying land somewhere else to relocate us. So it's really sort of puts, it really sort of reencapsulates that disaster scenario where I think in a lot of science fiction, especially that a lot of us consume, it's very apocalyptic, and climate change almost, you know, reinforces that apocalyptic nature of it, which tends to remove that element of hope that we just talked about is necessary, right? The fear is easily there, but the hope is not always as easy to access. And so maybe I'd like to pose the question to my fellow co-panelists is, what gives you hope for the future? What makes you hope and get excited for the future, given how scary climate change could be? I'll leave it back to you, Michelena, to MC that.
Great. So Dino and Tammy, did you want to answer that question? What gives you hope for the future, given the increasing impacts of climate change that you face?
Somehow, I know that's quite weird, but I think that behind every bad experience, I always believe there is always hope. Because when we've been experiencing very terrible things, for me, myself, I tend to have a kind of spirit to change kind of fear to be an energy to make a transformation or to make a change. Probably that's because of the, the culture. I mean, that's only the way you think. So like my parents, when they raised me up, they always said that behind every difficulties, there is always hope. Behind every bad experience, there's always hope to change. We call it in Indonesia hikmah. Hikmah is the kind of, hikmah is when you are facing bad experience, when you are thinking about the bad things, don't put yourself in a kind of trap. So why don't you try to change kind of fear, the feeling of emotion like worries? It becomes positive energy to make a change. That's why right now in Indonesia, especially in terms of climate reality in Indonesia, we embrace young people as many as possible. You can ask Dino, how many right now? Young climate leaders, hundreds and hundreds, Dino?
Yes, I think around 300 or 500.
Yes.
Yes, but because every year we also have like a youth leader for climate time. Technically, they get information about climate change from the climate realities, but because they're not trained directly from by Al Gore, their status is still not climate reality leaders, but technically they have the knowledge for some.
And they're really active in doing a kind of issues. They're really active. They're really clever. And then some of them, they have been talking many times in the UN, in the international events, only to show that we are young, we are afraid, we are worried, but because of this, we have an energy to make a change. So that's an Indonesian case, quite, in a way it's strange, but but it's happened.
That's amazing. And I'm sure you resonate with that. So the youth are what gives you hope, I'm assuming.
For me, I think for the case in Indonesia, I think also can relate with other countries. In here, we have like local wisdom, something like that. I think local wisdom, like stories from great ancestors, they give to their son, their great son, from mother to their son, something like that, about how to protect the environment, something like that. It's also very helpful to protect the nature, the environment for many centuries ago. But right now, because we live in technological era, information era, I think we must have like a global wisdom, something like that. Because in Indonesia, I think also not only local wisdom but global wisdom. I think internet, TikTok or something like that have positive impact also. I think there are many youth activists right now. More people, I think, more familiar with Greta Thunberg, something like that. In Indonesia and also other generations, we have faced many challenges. For example, in 1940s, the challenge probably will be about World War, something like that. 20 years ago, pandemic, or and then in Indonesia we have like we fight for democracy. I think that the case right now for the youth, they're not demonstrate about bring down this president or something like that, or make some democracies work. but right now they're more into environmental issues. I think it can create hope. We can fight together. We can force together to get better future for ourselves and also for our societies and for our children. I think it's hope is still there, because there are many people care about the environment and then also the future. I think we will deal with this together because we have like global wisdom, not only local wisdom right now.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Definitely global wisdom. In the last panel, I believe one person said, the world has ended many times, and that's what gives them hope. I'm not sure who said it. Chuk, if you remember, feel free to mention. But
was it Maxime? I feel like it was Maxime who said it.
It was Maxim, yeah.
Oh, no, it was Maria.
Oh, it's Maria. And that's such a beautiful segue.
And it was an M name. It was an M name.
Amazing.
Ooh, if I could ask maybe one more question as well, because those responses were so interesting. I feel like we often forget the role of language, and Maria actually mentioned something about language in the last session as well. But the role of language and the ways in which we are able to understand climate action, but then also kind of as you're saying, Dino, when the ancestors are passing on knowledge, they tend to pass it on in a specific language. It doesn't translate very well to other languages. And there's this really interesting study that very recently came out that shows that a greater concentration of linguistic diversity has also been linked to a greater concentration of biodiversity. And so it's really interesting to just how every form of justice is linked to everything. And so with what Dino and Utami were saying about the youth piece as well, I thought about this word in Michif, Nacho Pishkokun. And this word is so interesting to me because the way we translate it in English or French would be ancestor. But typically in English or in French, when we think about an ancestor, we think about the people who came before us, right? But in Michif specifically, this word is used to refer to the people who came before your grandparents and the people who come after your grandson. So it makes it cyclical, which I thought was just so interesting. And I was just like, huh. And so it's one of those things where it's like once it's translated, it loses that power because it doesn't really mean ancestor. And so I guess my question for Dino and Utami is there one word, each of you, in your local language? I know in Indonesia they speak Indonesian, but I know there's also a lot of local languages. So depending on which language you want, is there one word that you want to share that has a really interesting meaning that doesn't translate well to English?
Yeah. So when I mentioned about hikmah means when you believe that there is a kind of hope or a good thing behind every bad experience or bad things, it somehow can translate the negative feelings into strength, not to put yourself in the trap of the worries, but you should act, move on, move forward. And can I say one thing about the traditional thing or local wisdom in Indonesia? We have it for generation, what we call, for example, the concept of Ibu Bumi. Ibu Bumi, it's a kind of Mother Earth.
Mother Earth.
Yes. In Papua and in Kalimantan, for example, I myself come from a kind of indigenous people, Borneo, Dayak. We believe that if something happened into the environment, if there is a flooding, there is a fire, there is a landslide, your mother is getting angry because of your action, because what you do right now, it is not good. You have to change. You have to make your mother become happy again. The Ibu Bumi, the Mother Earth. And the way to make your mother not crying, Ibu Pertiwi, that's a kind of combination, not only Mother Earth land, but also the water area, because in Indonesia we are archipelago. So the way to make your mother, your mom, become happy, do action, protect the environment, protect the people by having action, real action, not only talking, but walk the talk, walk the talk. So you have to transform a kind of challenges, a kind of fear into the good energy to make a change, not only for yourself, but for the people surrounding you, for Mother Earth, and then for the global. So, that's a kind of the way of thinking in Indonesia. Many people in Indonesia, we have a similar way to think because of the tradition, because of the local wisdom.
Yeah, so that's beautiful. It's very community centered instead of very individualistic, which is what we have here in North America. Dina, was there a word that you wanted to share? We have a couple more minutes before we have to switch over to workshops.
Okay, I think about the words, I agree with Tami, like Mother Earth or Ibu Bumi, something like that. We have we have like 17,000, something like that. I think the values from other island and others are almost like the same. We have like local wisdom to protect something that have good benefit for the community, for the societies. The words that might came to my mind is pamali. Pamali means like when you do something bad, something not right for the society, something bad will happen. For example, you cannot cut the trees, but actually the ancestors, they don't have explanation for that, because actually when you cut down the trees, something bad will happen. There will be flood, something like that. But because of that the words pamali, something like that, you cannot do this because it's pamali. You cannot do this because it's pamali, something like that. People tend to follow the rules, something like that. So but the words is very powerful. But for now, I think when we try to communicate with adolescents, with the youth, the powerful language, I think, is digital content. We have TikToks, we have YouTube, something like that. I mean, in Indonesia, even when we talk mostly Indonesian language, they also follow the content from English language or from French or even from Chinese Mandarin speaking language or Korea, K-pop, something like that. Because the digitals have powerful message, because they can see the image, something like that, and then we can translate with other language. So the language is important, but the visual is more general and global language, I think, besides music and football. All right, Chuk.
Yes, exactly. More climate action and the arts. I definitely agree with you there.
Yes, art, okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Art is global language. Thank you, Michelena.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, I will pass it over to Maria so that we can enter the art portion of this workshop.